watching The Pulse on the Joy News channel. This afternoon, food shortage looms in Ghana, especially in senior high schools, as suppliers issue a 14-day ultimatum to government for the payment of their arrears. This afternoon, we hear from the Ghana Buffer Stock Company, which is working around the clock to avert any disruption to academic activities for free senior high school beneficiaries.
Doing everything possible to make sure that Chief of Staff have held a meeting on 3 different occasions on this food issue, how to resolve it once and for all. You understand? So, yes, my hands are tied, but thankfully, government is giving me the needed and the necessary support.
We'll get the response from the Buffer Stock Company for you shortly. Also, there's dead silence at the court complex today as judicial service staff withdraw services across the country, leaving many stranded in court today.
They should even have somebody at the gate, either in front of the gate or at the gate of the court, to turn us back or tell us something. It's frustrating.
Latest concerns from the staff of the judiciary, plus get you some updates and an exclusive interaction with Ghana's ambassador to the United Arab Emirates, who is hopeful the parliaments of both countries will ratify an MOU to make it easier for Ghanaians seeking to enter the Emirati countries for greener pastures. It's all coming up here on The Pulse.
Is helping you to make sure that these things are moving down. So we signed an MOU on labor migration. Okay. But it has not been fully ratified back home and even here. Okay. So it is still, in the pipeline. That's right.
Coming up here on The Pulse. The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities, Dignilu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. Don't forget that we're on DSTV channel 421. The show is brought to you by Global Communities, Dignilu. I am Blessed Sugan. Stay with us for details. We start off with concerns across senior high schools here in the country. We'll tell you why there may be food shortages shortly. Please stay. Well, this afternoon, the National Food Suppliers Association is hinting at halting supply of foodstuff to all senior high schools under the free senior high school policy across the country. According to the association, government has failed to honor payments of outstanding arrears of 18 months, a situation that has led to banks chasing the producers, all the suppliers, for their properties and assets because they are all in default of the loan agreements. My colleague Samuel Mbura is joining us via Zoom for a breakdown of the concerns being raised by these associations. Let's get into the details. Mbura, bring us up to speed, first of all, with the immediate concerns from the suppliers. We know that there are issues about finances, but exactly how and what's the nature of their concerns, by the way?
Well, Blessed, the association says its members have been given promises upon promises of plans and arrangements to settle the debt owed them by both the Ministry of Education and the Buffer Stock Company, but none of those promises have been fulfilled. According to the National Food Suppliers Association, they have lost credibility in the eyes of creditors, who are now resorting to all manner of threatening and dehumanizing activities against members, all in the bid to recoup their money borrowed to them. The banks are on their necks now to take over their property and assets due to a default in the loan agreements. Now, they are therefore serving notices to the Ministry of Education and the National Food Buffer Stock Company that failure to pay them in 14 working days from now, all the arrears owed to their members, they will resort to picketing the premises of the National Food Buffer Stock Company.
But you've been engaging the Chief Executive Officer of the Buffer Stock Company. We'll get into his response. But how soon are these suppliers likely to cut supplies to the schools? Are they giving a timeline as to when they would act?
Well, the CEO of the National Food
Samuel Mbura, are you still with us? The question about the timelines. Hello there, Samuel. We'll bring you, of course, the details of the timeline as we have it from the suppliers dealing with the buffer stock company. But the CEO of the buffer stock himself has been providing some updates as to what the concerns are and how government intends to deal with this imminent food shortage, I should say, on the various senior high school campuses.
On the 4th of this month, the Honorable Minister for Education actually wrote to Ministry of Finance for the release of an outstanding claim of 275 million and 31,542 Ghana cedis 70 pesos for the payment of 2022 arrears, validated, what they have validated so far. This is less than a month. On the 4th of this month was when the minister, after this press briefing, I will give you the opportunity to have a glance of this document so that you can also make a follow-up to the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Finance, whether this letter was actually written and sent to them for the release of funds. So it cannot be the case that monies have been released for them and we have not paid them. And 3 badges that they are saying cannot accumulate to, we have never had 3 badges accumulate to 275 million. In any case, the total amount of money so far that we owe suppliers for 2022 is 200,395,718 Ghana cedis, 24 pesos. So what it means is that if the 275 million Ghana cedis is cleared today, we are in a good position to clear all their money and still have a balance of 75 million Ghana cedis. So it is not true that we have received funds from the ministry. And their claim sharply contradicts the letter written by the Honorable Minister of Education to the Honorable Minister of Finance. They say they have sources and contacts at the Ministry of Education. And I'm so surprised that their contacts or their sources is not pointing out to them that there are other people that the Ministry of Education have also engaged to do the supply, not buffer stock. The Ghana Commodity Exchange, they have also registered suppliers under them to supply to the same institutions. So it is not buffer stock. We haven't gone to contract anybody to do any supply. So their source at the ministry should tell them that it is the ministry. You understand? Even though I have my reservation, because if your suppliers are coming to tell you something about a transaction between you and Ministry of Education that you are not even aware, it creates the cause to be alarmed. You understand? But let's put that one aside because the contract is between buffer stock and Ministry of Education. But if suppliers are, just this morning we received information that some suppliers said, the ministry said, they are going to release money to buffer stock. They are going to pay uniforms. When they pay uniform, they will get some money and pay buffer stock. But why should that be the case? I'm working with you, and I have to be getting information about payment from suppliers. So I think there is some mistrust, and I have proven myself and my team, we have proven ourselves over the years, and most of them are people that those who even organize the press conference that have even come here once upon a time when there was no even when their payments were not even due, and we have money from other businesses to support them. We use those monies to support them. But like I said, I sympathize with them. I stand with them because it is a fact that we owe them. And like I said, batch 18 of 2022 supplies is what we are putting together to send to Ministry of Education. 2022 supply, batch 18, is currently here. We are finalizing on that to push it to Ministry of Education. But when you less what we have so far and what is gone to Ministry of Finance from Ministry of Education, we have 198,192,000 1,560 Ghana cedis, 24 pesos.
Well, so that's the position of the buffer stock company, but the spokesperson for the National Food Suppliers Association, Koku Amaduma, is joining us in studio now. Such a great time to be talking to you, because you've just heard from the Chief Executive Officer for the buffer stock company. He says even in some cases you find them going out of their way to speak to businesses to support you as the suppliers. So that's the extent to which the buffer stock has goodwill towards your suppliers, isn't it?
Thank you so much, my brother. I'd like to say good evening to your cherished viewers out there. Yes, let me respond quickly to what Mr. Hanan has said. I think it's just meandering around the real issues of people who have supplied goods, people who have undertaken loans from creditors, people who have gone to farmers to tell them that they have contracts with buffer stock, in that case government, that in 60 days they were going to return their money.
60
days, right. That's 2 months, they're going to return. That is the issue we are discussing. Right. So again, he made the point that buffer stock doesn't have a contract with the suppliers. I think he has to check his facts correct. All our members have letters to the effect that they have contracts with buffer stock, and terms of payment were spelled out in that contract. And in that contract, it was spelled out that when you supply to buffer stock to the various goods of your quota, and then you return invoices to buffer stock, you are going to be given your money. That is the bottom line. And we've been chasing buffer stock for 2 years now, almost 2 years now, for our money. My brother, the last time we supplied, those who supplied maize, was at 160 cedis for a bag. Today, as we speak, the price of maize is about 600 cedis. At the time, we supplied a carton of milk at 72 cedis. Today, a carton of milk is going for 192 cedis. At the time, beans was 500. Today, a bag of beans.
You're basically telling us that you've made losses even before your funds are released.
And then we expect some comforting statement coming from buffer stock. Because on several occasions we've been to buffer stock. He has never told us that he doesn't have a contract with us. He kept giving promises. In fact, the last time he said he was going to give us our money on the 10th of May. So if you didn't have contract with us, how on earth were you giving us promises? I think it is time for us to face reality. That these are women who have toiled to bring foodstuffs from the hinterland to the schools. And then these are people who have clear heart to support the government to roll out its pro-poor policy of free SHS. So we expect some commendation, some sympathy from the CEO of buffer stock.
And of course you deserve that, but the challenge here is that most of your members are aware of the reality, the fact that you're working for government. And as we often do say here in Ghana, government cannot owe you necessarily. Obviously, there's the time the government will release the funds, except that it may delay. Most of your members are experienced on that score, isn't it? Because you've dealt with the schools. You've dealt with the schools over the years.
My brother, this is not delay. This is a deliberate attempt to delay.
Well, how do you prove that? That's where you'll be challenged.
See, when Ministry of Finance releases funds to pay the indebtedness of our suppliers to our suppliers, the funds don't come in totality, and so the buffer stock has the discretion to choose who and who to settle. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, that discretion has been abused over and over again. Because they have the discretion to choose who and who to pay because of the multiplicity or the duplicity of the suppliers,
contracts,
of the suppliers, that process is abused. Because if Mr. Hanan, who is, I don't know if he's watching me now, the last time we were at the meeting, he made a point that at times when even monies were released for the suppliers to be paid, those monies are channeled out to pay their own loans that they have contracted from the banks. And this is a clear case of an institution that is not working. This is a clear case of a deviation from the mandate of its own creation.
You've not provided me with the evidence.
The evidence is that
the discretionary power is not being
the
used
evidence is
appropriately.
that we've been to Minister of Education, and he made it point clear to us
that the funds have been released.
Yes, that 90% of 2022
right.
arrears have been paid.
But you have no evidence to prove what you're telling us, that it's a deliberate attempt on the part of the CEO. It is a deliberate.
I'm coming.
You've not provided any evidence.
I'm getting there.
Right.
I'm getting there.
Right.
If the minister who is responsible for releasing funds was categorical in telling us that he has paid 2022 delivery or funding or arrears to buffer stock, and that the money left is about 10%, and that we don't have that money having been paid to us, but the minister himself is telling us that he has released the money to buffer stock, and we know buffer stock has paid some people out of our
you
yes.
have.
We have had people who were paid 5% of the total amount they were owing. I have a woman who was owing, who had who has supplied to the tune of 21 million Ghana cedis, and he was paid 500,000 Ghana cedis. That is what I'm talking about. That discretion was abused, and that explains why the 90% didn't get to us. The 90% that the Minister of Education claims he has released for us to get from buffer stock, that we did not get. My brother, this is a serious matter.
Okay.
It is a serious to the point that these are women who have gone all out their way to solicit for foodstuffs, and some engage in importing some of these things like beans or maize from Côte d'Ivoire to supply. And this is what they've been doing over the years to survive on their own. Now their money is being locked up for 2 years. And we are now being told that a process is being initiated, letters are being written, and then the money is going to become. This is not the time for us to be giving promises. In fact, this is not the only time we have made agitations, except that because of the clear heart we have in support of government policy, we've never come out with anything of owing with the government. We've always kept it to ourselves. But it is because of the way the institutions respond to us. We have written letters. We have written letters to buffer stock. We have written letters to Minister of Education. We have written letters to the Office of the President. We have had no single response from any of these institutions. We have had calls to even walk up to some of these institutions. We have had calls to go to buffer stock where we had CEO car park at the garage, and he will be in his office, but we'll be told he's not in the office.
When you were told by the minister, and this is supposed to be the finance minister or the education minister.
The education minister.
When you met him and he gave you assurances that payments were released, did you see any piece of evidence backing that indeed the payments were transferred to buffer stock?
Of course, he went through his books that he could not give us a copy. And he showed us proof that funding were released. And let me refer to you. Even in those periods.
And you know why I'm asking you?
Yes, I know what you're asking.
Yes.
Even in those periods, we had Hanan, the CEO of Buffer Stock, on radio and in TV. I don't want to mention those radio stations, categorically stating that they have paid up to date all the suppliers. It was when we went to his office attempting to pick it because we did not receive those monies that they claim or he claimed he has settled, that he came back to pay us 5%, 2%, 3% each of our costs or of our indebtedness to them.
How much in terms of percentage did you receive? Because you're a leading figure of the group.
Yes, I received 3%.
But at least that's something. That's money.
But this is the money that has that government has kept over 1 year. Let's say almost 2 years. That money I have been paid was with no interest. I went to bank to take money in order to do a supply, with the hope that in 2 months I'll be able to get the money from buffer stock based on the contract I have attested to with buffer stock. That in 2 months I'll be paid. In 18 months I have not yet received the payment. I'm only receiving promises. Are you sure that the bank are going to give me this lineage to be able to be given these excuses? Are you sure that our members who have gone to put their properties, their assets, as a guarantee to secure loans or facilities will be able to sustain with this kind of excuses? No. What are we doing? If the government decides to give us our money now, we're not taking the money with interest. So we should approach this matter with some sense of.
I see. You have 3%. Are there some of your members who have nothing at all?
Yes, there are a lot of them who had nothing at all. Okay. There are a lot of them who never even knew that there was some sort of disbursement going on. In fact, there are instances that quotations were given that go and supply at this price. Then when you come back, you are just told to sign and receive your money. And when you get to the signing, your contract price is, as at the time you sign, was higher than what you are signing to take. And no explanation has ever been given for that particular cancellation of the contract price. Let me explain for you to understand. Okay. Assuming we are given a contract price of 500 to supply a quantity at a certain price. Right. At the point of receiving your money is reduced. For instance, somebody supplied milk at the price of 100 and something cedis. He was paid only 50 cedis after a long hours of holding his money or her money. How do you expect such person to sustain his business?
But you in the market know about the trends and how to maneuver all of these challenges you're talking about. And that brings up the bigger picture I would want us to look at. The fact that the food supply system at the high school level is becoming very political and corrupt. You've heard that often, correct?
And we are not to be blamed for it.
But it's happening.
Yes, it's happening. The political class,
yes,
those who are managing the policy, are supposed to check the corruption. But we are not here to discuss corruption of free SHS. We are here to talk about our money. Whether corruption or no corruption, our money is what we need. Even though the value has depreciated, our working capital has reduced, we want our money.
I was asking the question because most of you inflate the prices of these products you supply.
That still remains an allegation.
Not proven?
Not proven. I don't remember any day I would inflate the prices of the commodity because the price is given by buffer stock. In fact, there's always a review process of the pricing or the selling of the pricing. So we don't determine at what price we're selling. Buffer stock has always released price lists of its commodities and we decide to supply. In fact, you see, I'm surprised we are now seen as detractors of the policy. We are now seen as some people who have once upon a time been done a favor by buffer stock, according to what Hanan is saying. But Hanan is getting it wrong because to go into the hinterland and bring foodstuffs to schools on credit, we had to pay drivers, we had to pay people who were loading the foodstuffs into the car. We did all these things on credit. And you don't want to appreciate our help to the policy of free SHS, but you are telling us that you help us source for the food that we brought to you. I have never been helped by buffer stock to source for my commodity.
Okay, I see.
And I don't remember any of our members who had gone to buffer stock claiming to be helped to be able to supply beans or rice to buffer stock.
Okay, Koku, let's look at the next steps. School is about to resume. The expectation from the heads of these institutions is that you'd supply food to the schools.
Yeah, the expectations of them rest with the management of the policy. In fact, they are expecting management of the policy to finance all these items or activities. So I don't think they are expecting we, the suppliers, to bring the food.
You're basically telling us you're not doing that.
With what capacity? What are we going to go into the hinterland with? We are going to go with money. If we don't have the money, we need to go with credibility. And that credibility we have lost. And we have lost credibility to the point that buffer stock itself has lost credibility. Before now, you could take buffer stock's letter to a bank and the bank will loan you to go and supply or work with buffer stock. But today, buffer stock letterhead doesn't go to the bank. The banks don't recognize buffer stock as a credible letter or contract letter upon which they could give us contract or give us facility to work with buffer stock. That is how low we have sunk as suppliers, and that is how low buffer stock has sunk.
You want school children to go hungry in schools because buffer stock is not treating you well?
We haven't said that. We have helped the school children because our kids are also in school. Indeed, I have 2 kids They are all benefiting from.
They'll go hungry.
Of course, they will go hungry, but compare what we, the suppliers, are going through, the sustenance of the business. If you don't have money to go back into the market to bring the stuff, and you don't have the credibility to go and take it on credit, is it our fault that the children are not getting it? It is not our fault. In fact, this free SHS or school feeding, whatever, was budgeted for in the 2022 budget. So where is the money spent?
23, you mean?
2023 budget.
Yeah, right.
So where has the money gone to? 1.5 years after the implementation of the budget. We want the money.
Okay. You were indicating to me earlier that there stands an agreement, if not a contract, between the buffer stock and you, the suppliers. Why not take this to court?
It's an option. And
you're considering that?
It's an option. But we are going one step after the other. For now, all the things we have done, all the walk-ins we have walked up to buffer stock's office, all the letters we have written, are all processes. We are building up a point. Now we have done a press conference. The next step is to pick it. Failure to pay or to get our money will be advised by our lawyers.
Okay, so you picket the buffer stock or the presidency?
Yes, of course.
Where are you going?
The contract with us is between us and buffer stock. So I heard my brother saying that they don't have a contract with us. It's unfortunate he's making this comment because at the time they needed the goods, they needed the foodstuffs. They appealed to our conscience because we have kids in the school. We want to support the government policy. But today we are being seen as people who have once been helped to source for food. But why not pay over 1 year? So is it because buffer stock has helped one or two of our suppliers one way or the other, so they can owe us to the tune of over 200 million Ghana cedis, and then we don't have to make claims over those monies when we are losing? As I speak to you, 2 of our members, husband and a wife, have lost their lives. Do you know why? Because most of these suppliers who go to take credit from these farmers have never given them money. So their houses are always thrown or fooled by these suppliers every morning. I have a supplier who is a member of our association in Cape Coast. Once last week, she called me and was on video call, and she wanted me to see creditors who have fooled her house, demanding for their money. And she was crying as she was on the video call with me.
So when all of this started, you engaged the education minister. Are you going back to him while you picket at the...
Yes, of course. We have a meeting with the education minister tomorrow.
Oh, you're meeting him tomorrow?
Yes, we are meeting him tomorrow. We hope something good comes out of it. We hope that they will come to the table and realize the sensitivity of our plight. You see, most of us who are engaged in these things have commitment. Commitment not with buffer stock, but our commitment to other bodies are contingent on the supplies we have done to buffer stock. Right. So until buffer stock gives us our money, our economic activities are choked somewhere else.
We need to go. Probably a lot more persons in authority who matter are watching us now. I'll give you a minute to send a message to them. What would that be?
I would like to tell them that this is not an attempt to frustrate the SHS policy. We are part of Ghanaians. We are also Ghanaians. We have our kids in the school. But we want government to understand that, you see, in this economy that we run, we also depend on other factors in order to supply our foodstuffs to the school. And those factors include we getting payment, prompt payment, based on the contract document we have had with them. So we can also go and pay our creditors. We want government to respond as quickly as possible to our problems. In fact, as we speak to you now, government is engaged in what we call in our normal supply as emergency supply. Right. And the government is not, buffer stock is not engaging us. You know why? Because we have our money with them. They are rather engaging people who are not part of our association. And those people are coming to us to take the foodstuffs to go and supply to buffer stocks. You see where our anger is coming from. We want to appeal to buffer stock. We want to appeal to the Minister of Education. We want to appeal to the President, His Excellency, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. It is a policy that he cherishes so much. It is a policy that he goes out to pride himself of, that he has brought free SHS to the people of Ghana. Let the free SHS be a blessing to the people of Ghana. Don't let free SHS rather collapse the businesses of we the suppliers to the disadvantage of the sustainability of the free SHS policy. Thank you.
We wish you well. We'll wait to see what the outcome of that meeting with the Education Minister will be tomorrow. Kokomeduma, thank you for spending some time with us. And we understand that this issue about feeding is not just affecting the senior high school level, even at the basic school. In our latest series of Ghana School of Shame, my colleague Jojo Kobana discovers how in the Pandu community, school children are being left out of school simply because of the issue of feeding. Check this out.
From afar, everything looks good at Pandu DA Primary School in the northeast Gonja district of the Savannah region.
All right, you are welcome to Pandu KG Primary Basic School. Here is KG2. My name is Madam Rita Enima. I'm the facilitator for KG2 here. After the Easter holidays, when we came back from the house, children have not been coming to school. Tuesday, only one child who came. Today, only one person who is in. Due to poor parental assistance in the community here, most of the children come to school without eating. When you ask the parents, they will complain they don't have money to cater for their awards. So now, actually, I'm having the total number of 11 students in the class.
They don't feed them. So always, when they are in school, for some short period of time, they will say, oh, we are hungry, we want to go home, because there is no feeding in the school.
Parents here disagree that they are unwilling to support their children. They argued that they built the school, provided furniture, and even paid teachers before the government intervened. The school management committee chairman said their farming business has failed because of unpredictable rainfall, so they are unable to feed their families.
Last time, my son needed a coin, but I shouted at him because I had no money. I was annoyed. I yelled. It spoiled my day. How come I could not give my child just a coin? It broke my heart. Some men are even committing suicide. But I won't do that. We don't have money. Times are really hard. We, the parents of Pandu, built the school. At the time we built the school, we farmed and everything was good.
The few children here say they're also hungry and wish they stayed at home. They want to go to another school where they can get one hot meal a day. But the distance to the next school discourages them.
We are hungry. That is the reason why many of my colleagues are not in school. Other schools have school feeding. I can't force my friends to come to school. I can't give them food. So when I call them and they refuse to come, I can't force them.
The school has no feeding program. When you are hungry, you go home. The next day, you don't think about school. You think about the hunger you face in school, and you rather choose to roam in search of food.
The children also complained about their only source of water. The school has a water tank which harvests rainwater, but the rains are yet to pour in Pandu. So for now, the children would have to endure drinking from the dam.
Anytime we drink the water, we become sick, but we don't have a choice.
When you look at the type of water they drink here, seriously, sometimes the bottle that they fetch water inside, no, it's not easy. When you see it, we even take it and throw it away, but it's normal here for them.
And there is dead silence at the court complex in Accra as the Judicial Service Staff Association of Ghana's nationwide strike is beginning to bite hard. Some unsuspecting clients who visited the court this morning were actually expressing their frustration after meeting an empty court premises. My colleague James Kwesi has been monitoring some of the activities in court here in Accra today and comes through with this report.
Absolutely nothing is happening here at the court complex in Accra. Now, on a normal day, the background you see there would have been buzzing with activities, cars coming in and out, people moving in and out of the courthouse. But today, following the strike, indefinite nationwide strike that have been declared by the Judicial Service Staff Association of Ghana, every activity at the court have been brought to a halt. The demand of these workers is that government need to, with immediate effect, review their salaries. They make the point that every 2 years, government is supposed to review their salary. But for the past 2 years and 5 months, government has been unable to review their salaries, and so they are calling for that. They have been making the calls for the past few weeks, but following during their press conference yesterday, they made it known that all efforts to get government to do what they are asking for has proven futile, and so they have directed that every worker of the judicial service, from the receptionist to the court clerks to the registrars, all of them go on strike. And so for those clients who have visited the courts today, this morning, in order to either appear in court or do some paperwork in the court, have all been turned away. We can listen to some of them who have been expressing their frustration to Joy News.
I have a case in Land Court 5, and the case is supposed to come on Monday, but I just wanted to come and verify whether it will come on. Actually, I'm not aware that the judicial service is on strike. I don't know. So I came here, I didn't see any people. So I called my lawyer's office, and they said they are on strike.
The lawyer said who is on strike?
The lawyer's office, the chamber, a clerk there told me that they are not working today because they are on strike.
So which means when you came, there was nobody in the office until you call your lawyer?
Yeah, but I couldn't get anybody, I couldn't see anybody. And really, if you ask anybody to know what is telling you anything, you see. So in fact, first I thought because it was, today is a AU day, that's why they are not working. So I called the lawyer's office and I was told that they are on strike.
What do you do from here?
Oh, I'm going to the lawyer's chamber. I've called, they say, the clerk says he has now come. So I'm going there. Really, the case is supposed to come on Monday. So I'm also to travel. So I'm waiting tomorrow. If I don't hear anything, then I have to travel tomorrow.
Which means that Monday you will not come here any longer?
Yeah, if by the close of Friday they are not be able to resolve that issue, then it means Monday too, there wouldn't be any work.
When I got to the gates, I saw that the gate is open, but nobody is there. No court official is there. No court officer is there to talk to you. The frustrating. No, the frustration. I'm even afraid to get inside because if the court officers are not there, you go inside. What happens? So I think they should even have somebody at the gate, either in front of the gate or at the gate of the court, to turn us back or tell us something. It's frustrating.
When was your case supposed to be heard?
Today we have other motions. I use the court almost every day. I have court almost every day. I have court almost every day. I work in charge of OSU store cases and my personal company cases. So I'm here almost every day. And I don't think this will help even the state because the revenue is also going.
How was the inability of the court to hear your case or the case to proceed, how is it going to affect you, especially your company?
Yes, as I stated earlier, it's frustrating because For instance, I have a Ghana-UAE order to take money, for the court to give me order for the banks to come and pay us money. Without the court resuming, you cannot come. You don't even know when they are coming for you to know when you are taking even your money. You understand? We have a Ghana-UAE order. We file motion we are applying for Ghana-UAE for the banks to come and pay us money. You don't know when. You don't even know when. So I'm pleading. I know the court is a court of law, and they will not do anything in a vacuum. They must have a reason why they are doing this. So I'm pleading with the state. I know things are hard for everybody, for the state, but they have to look at the court. The court is all we have.
Earlier when we arrived, we had access to the court premises, but later some security personnel, precisely the police, arrived in some 2 pickups and drove all of us, the media, as well as the members of the general public, away with the explanation that the place is not open for the general public today. As to how long this will continue, the security personnel will continue to man the premises, we do not know, but it has been a place of inaction today. Day 1 of the JUSAC strike is beginning to bite hard, especially on persons who have some work to do in court. Reporting from the court complex in Accra for Joy News, my name is James Kwesi Aveji.
And of course, I need to point out that Xavier Kuja, who speaks for the Ghana Bar Association, is joining us via Zoom. Thank you, sir, for joining us today as well. But just before I get to you, we can now have a sense of what's happening in the Ashanti region, Kumasi to be precise, where the Ashanti regional branch of the Ghana Bar Association is asking government to immediately intervene in the strike declared by the Judicial Service Staff Association of Ghana. Regional chairperson of the group, Kwame Owusu-Sechere, says the strike will delay court proceedings and will leave the court users stranded if government fails to intervene. Nanaya Bwachi Adam has more.
The Judicial Service Staff Association of Ghana declared an indefinite strike after the expiry of an ultimatum issued to the government to address demands for the approval of salary increase. The strike has left court users stranded at various court complexes in the Ashanti region, including the Kumasi High Court and the Court of Appeal. The Ashanti Regional Chairman of the Ghana Bar Association, Kwame Owusu-Sechere, says the government must find an immediate solution to ensure the judicial service staff return to work. He says the absence of JUSAC will negatively affect every court activity.
Yeah, I'm worried in the sense that it's affecting administration of justice in the region. If the strike is nationwide, then the nation. But this morning, for instance, we have a lot of cases that we're supposed to do. You have to file processes that has to be done so that you file it within time, because the proceedings and everything is regulated by law. When you want to file any process, there is a specific time limit within which to file. So you come here, you want to file, and it's not there. What happens to that process? And then those who are on remand, who are supposed to even be brought to court, for them to get justice by way of application for bail and others, they cannot come. So what happens is that people's rights will be affected, and it's a very serious thing that we have to find a way of resolving so that these people can come back for us to continue with the administration of justice as far as the region is concerned.
Some court users who are left stranded want JUSAC to rescind their decision.
Today I'm very sad, and because I've traveled all the way from Seshibekwai to file papers in this court, and to my surprise, we heard the news yesterday night. It was very late, so we thought they were not going to implement it, but to our surprise, it's in full implementation that they are not going to work, and we are very sad, because looking at the duties of the court and those that the courts are serving, we are highly in need of the service of the court, because we need justice. And for us to come here to see no worker here, no court worker here, is something that we can't say anything about. But just that it has worried us, and we know we are pleading that they should give ear to their plea and let them come back to work, because in fact it's very worrisome.
I came from Obuasi Chichire. I lost my husband not long ago, and I have been coming to court almost every day. This is very disturbing. I had to come for my ruling today, but the court isn't opened to us. It's very disturbing. The government must do something about this.
Chairman of the Ashanti Regional JUSAC, Osei Kwabena Ntansa, however, says the industrial action will continue if government fails to heed to their demands.
As has been mentioned earlier by our national executives, they said until the government approves the new salary and pay us from January, including the arrears, that's going to change their mind. We are following the footsteps of the national, so whatever they say is what we are going to adhere to. Other than that, there's nothing we at the local level can do.
What of persons who are here bringing their case? Some are coming for review, some are coming for redress and ruling. What of them?
It's unfortunate it has happened this way. We all don't want it this way. But look at the situation in the country now. Cost of living, everything is being increased. Our colleagues, they have their salaries being increased by 30% since January. And judicial service staff, we have not received anything of that sort. And we'll go to the same market. You can just imagine. So all that we are pleading is the government should approve our new salaries and pay us. That's what that we are fighting for. And it's also unfortunate that these people are also serving as the court users. We don't want it that way, but it has come. There's nothing that we can do.
So the JUSAG indefinite strike action over unpaid arrears takes effect today. Here at the Kumasi High Court, court users would not have access to the courtroom. Every single office here is locked and not opened for any judicial activity. For Joy News, my name is Nana Boachi Dankwayado.
Well, so that's a wrap of what's happening in Ashanti region. I want to bring in now the PRO for the Ghana Bar Association, Xavier Kuja, is with us. Thank you, sir. So you've heard the concern, not just from Accra, but also what's happening in parts of the country. Just a day after JUSAG declared this strike. For you as the Ghana Bar Association, are you making any form of intervention just to contain the situation?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you to your viewers. Yes, we're making some interventions behind the scenes, but for now, I think we just appeal to the parties, JUSAG and government, to go back and talk to each other, because I believe that this is an act of last resort on the part of JUSAG, because according to them, their grievances have been known to government for a very long time. So we think that they are reasonable people. So if government is able to make sincere promises to them with definite timelines, they should be able to come back latest maybe by Monday.
But then the aspect of justice delivery, that will be grave for those who are awaiting judgment and others.
Exactly so, because of course that is true. But JUSAG is a body on its own. They have their rights. They know why this is the time they have chosen. That is why I said that the best way out is for government to engage them, so that at least even if their demands are not met entirely, sincere promises with definite timelines can be made to them. They are reasonable people, and they will go back to work. And as it happens now, all of us have a lot of work to do. Judges will have a pile of work to do. JUSAG itself will have a pile of work to do. Lawyers will have a pile of work to do. Court users who are disappointed. So when they come back, it means that every stakeholder in this equation has a lot more work to do, more than as usual we do.
Now, with JUSAG itself and, the concerns they are raising, is it the case that the Ghana Bar Association is flippant about this? The fact that you do not see reason for which they're pulling out in terms of rendering their services?
We are not part of judicial service. We are just lawyers practicing our trade in conjunction with the judicial service. What the grievance judicial service has to do with government, not us. So they take their own decisions. We don't pay them salary. We have nothing to do with their service conditions. So this came to us too as a blow, because we didn't know what was happening until we heard it on air yesterday.
And so for the interventions you're making now, when do you estimate that all of this may be done and dusted with?
hopefully Monday we should see some action. That is why I am saying that the best people to deal with this is JUSAC as well as government, because they are the main people involved. So they should engage each other. And as I said, let me reiterate, they may not necessarily be asking that pay them now. They're asking for approval. If that is done with definite timelines regarding payment, with sincere promises, I believe that they will come, because they are reasonable people. They also have relatives who use the courts. And this is where they make a living.
And for your members, are they beginning to reach out to national leadership over how this strike is affecting them?
Well, it's natural. Of course, you have a few calls as to what's happening. That's why I said we are working behind the scenes, and very soon we'll see results. But to reiterate again, the major players in this game is government and JUSAC. They have to go back and see whatever must be done, because as to what their grievances are, we have nothing to do with it. We are just court users and practitioners or stakeholders who are suffering the brunt of what government and JUSAC failed to agree on. So we are appealing for government's immediate intervention, at least if sincere promises and definite guidelines are made regarding their demands. I am sure, being reasonable people, they will get back to work.
Grateful for your time, Xavier Kudje, PRO for the Ghana Bar Association. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're focusing on the International Monetary Fund and Ghana's bailout because the IMF says Ghana's current situation in terms of the conditionalities with the IMF will obviously be one that will require a lot of actions. President Akufo-Addo himself has been commenting on a number of issues earlier today when he spoke about this whole IMF deal, the package, and the fact that the economic crisis will only be resolved if government is able to stick to the reforms and the conditions spelled out in the $3 billion support program. We know that the nation has already received at least $600 million with government indicating that it will be using the money to shore up the Bank of Ghana's reserves and budgetary support. However, are some concerns about whether or not the program will take Ghana out of the current economic challenges that we're facing. The resident representative, Dr. Leandro Medina, is confident that the effective implementation of the bailout program here in Ghana will achieve the objective.
We are quite confident about the strength of the program and that it will be implemented as it has been designed. I could say that commitment is there. The objectives are to restore the macro, to get us out of the crisis, to ensure that debt is go down a sustainable path, to increase growth and to make it more inclusive. And Ghanaians are really looking forward to this. They are really looking forward to see inflation going down, to see the improvement in the management of the fiscal account, and to see more opportunities and more growth. In that sense, we are quite confident that the conditions will be met and that we are going to have a very successful path forward.
I go through your program and I realize that you are, the staff report, quite heavy on the fiscal situation. It appears that's where our major challenges in terms of the necessary corrections that this program is trying to do, right?
This program, the policies and reforms that will support the objectives, one of the main fronts is the fiscal front.
Yeah.
We expect a large and front-loaded fiscal consolidation. This will be done through revenue mobilization, and also through making expenditure more efficient. But of course, this will be done while protecting the vulnerable, protecting the poor, because ensuring social protection is one of the key aspects of the program. And if I may, give you two examples, two key examples of what is being done by authorities in their economic program is first, in the 2023 budget, the benefits under the LEAP are being doubled, and also the school feeding program is being adjusted to counteract the effects of the inflation. But these are just a few examples of what the program is doing in these aspects.
And are these social interventions or social protection, do you think they are quite strong to help absorb the shock? Because some Ghanaians are worried that this is quite a crash fiscal program, and any program that's set to correct some of these things will come with some shocks on the economy and shocks for Ghanaians.
In the context of a crisis, as Ghana is suffering, and the bold, very strong reforms that and policies that the government is taking is extremely important to protect the vulnerable. And there are, as I mentioned before, there are key interventions that the government is doing to make sure that the shocks do not hurt the most vulnerable.
Well, this may not come easy. The IMF is already pointing to some challenges, one being the external debt restructuring. Data analyst with our research desk, Isaac J, joins me with more. And Isaac, you'll be walking us through a number of the issues coming up already. Let's start off with the immediate concern.
Well, so you spoke about the debt restructuring. Yeah. So currently what we have is an assurance. So after the assurance, you have to go ahead and do what we call the actual restructuring. So we've been able to get assurance from the G20 common framework. China is involved, India is involved, there's UK, there's France, and all the big guys you can find in the G20 common framework. And so the IMF has revealed that, for instance, what we are trying to do, first of all, is the balance of payment situation or gap. So the financing gap for the entire program is estimated at $15 billion US. And if you look at 2023 alone, we need close to $4.2 billion to close or finance that huge deficit or balance of payment gap. The IMF itself will give us $1.2 billion. We'll have $530 million USD from World Bank. But the most important thing is going forward, now you have a framework, you know how you want to do the restructuring, and you have to talk to the external creditors and know if you're going to, the type of relief you're going to get. And if you are talking about restructuring, what is the magnitude of the haircut that these external creditors are willing to take? You need to start negotiating with them one by one. So go to China, go to France, go to UK, go to Belgium, and engage India. All of them have separate portfolios with you. And just like the G20 Common Framework said in their press statement, when they were giving us this kind of assurance, they said, apart from them, governments must also go ahead and engage other creditors like the Eurobond creditors. We owe them the biggest, around $13 billion US.
And beyond the restructuring, the impact that this will have even on at the domestic level, that should be something we should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, of course. Even the domestic debt restructuring that we had, which achieved a participation rate of about 85%, had its own challenge on the banking sector, for instance. It has been confirmed by the finance minister and the governor as well. That is why they are doing this recapitalization and also putting in place a stabilization fund to make sure that banks that will be, will take a hit from this whole restructuring will be cushioned. At the external level, right after you defaults, you should know that it will come with consequences. And for instance, if you default on your commercial loans from the Eurobond market, it simply means that you cannot go back to the market to borrow. And even if you want to go to the market to borrow, it will come at a high interest rate. Yesterday, the president spoke, I think 2 days ago in Doha, saying that we probably will get back to the international capital market soon because we need it. We need it because the balance of payment support we're talking about, for instance, $4.2 billion in 2022, IMF and World Bank will give us about $2.5 billion. Right. You are still left with a deficit of over $2 billion to service. This $2 billion that you want to service, if you really want to do this without touching your reserves or without having to deplete your reserve further, it is either you do restructuring, get the relief from restructuring, or probably go to the international fund market to borrow and to fill this gap.
China has come up strongly because of how much we owe them and what percentage of our external debt they hold. Will that be a major factor that will play out?
China has always been, the big guy at the negotiation table, probably because most of the external creditors were looking at China first. China must play ball before we all come along. And China was made co-chair with France for the G20 Common Framework, so it means they are involved. Right. And even with their involvement, there's still some sort of concerns around China's whole deal because they have majority of their loans being collateralized. So it simply means that if you take the $1.9 billion US that we owe China, we have some of them that have been collateralized against certain minerals, like proceeds from oil, from cocoa, and then also from bauxite, and even including sales from electricity. People are saying that this is under a safety net or a safeguard loan, but blessed we know that if you go to a bank and you borrow and then you tell the bank that I'm using my house as a collateral, it simply means that if you default, the bank will come for your house, right? So we have collateralized loans with China. It's around 619 million. And page 52 of the IMF program stated clear that this is the amount of collateralized loans that we owe, and everything is held by China. And they had their own definition of collateralized loans. They say it could be an asset or it could be a revenue stream. And if you default, the creditor has the right to have access to this stream, revenue stream or whatever assets you may have. We have templates across Africa where when Uganda, Zimbabwe, they all defaulted on the loans they were owing China, we know what happened. Because some of the loans, they use their assets as security or collateral, and they went for it. And it's clear that the Chinese are in for business. And we went to them because we said we're tired of, grants, we're tired of aid. We wanted to do business. And just like the way you go to a bank and take money from the bank or borrow money from the bank for business and will pay back, that is the same thing that the Chinese will also want us to do. They are in for business, and we must be careful how we deal with some of these problems.
Let's look at the trajectory. The last time we went to the IMF, how soon did we move out of economic recession?
Well, the last time we went to the IMF, the situation was a bit different because we didn't have this problem of unsustainable debt. Our debt levels were not unsustainable like the way it is currently. So it made the whole program a bit smooth. We didn't have to do anything sort of restructuring or debt treatment or haircut or what do you call it. So it was very simple for us. The 16th IMF program and the 17th are different in the sense that the 16th one didn't have anything to do with haircuts, debt restructuring. But with this, our debt levels are so unsustainable that we need a fiscal space to even make sure that we accommodate the $3 billion bailout package from the IMF. That's what makes the 16th IMF program different. But experts like, Bob Crane says that the 16th IMF program failed on its mandate to bring down debt levels. So probably you may also say that IMF didn't really do a very good job in bringing down our debt levels in the 16th program. But with the 17th, they are probably putting in place measures to make sure that we do not go back to the level we are in currently.
What are the projections in terms of how this will reduce inflation and also impact positively on the economy?
Well, currently we are in probably I will call it the ICU. We've moved from OPD to ICU. We are receiving treatment. And the first thing we want is probably a stability in the cedi. The cedi must start performing well against main trading currencies like the USD. We've seen the data. The cedi is performing pretty well. And if you compare what happened the same time last year and what is happening currently, then it is good news because last year the cedi can just move from 12 cities to 13 cities, 13 to 14. They were discrete movement. But this time around, the depreciation has been very slow. So first thing is to make sure that the local currency has been stabilized. Then we move from there to achieve some sort of inflation stabilization. We've seen inflation coming down after peaking in December 2022. It's around 41%, but the target of the program is to reduce it further, probably go back to the single digits that we were.
Isaac Ufieje, grateful data analyst with the Joy News team. You're watching The Pulse. We'll return with a lot more, especially as we mark the African Union Day. There are some details that we need to share with you about trade on the continent and Africa's development. Please stay. And you're welcome back. Today is Africa Day, and Pan-African agency Brands Africa says it is alarmed at the sharp decline in the patronage and appreciation of products manufactured on the African continent as compared to those of imported origin. The group today released its 13th list of most admired brands in Africa based on a survey conducted in 32 African countries that account for more than 85% of the continent's GDP and population. Key highlights from the document point out that despite the optimism with the progress of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and other initiatives to drive African progress, African brands regressed to some 20% from a 10-year high of 17% to 14% share of the top 100 almost admired brands in Africa. Let's bring in my colleague Michael Niashali, who's been monitoring details of this latest research released by Brands Africa. Papani, why are African brands not being patronized by Africans themselves?
Well, that is not something directly that this survey actually points out. What we have is actually what the questions you had asked the people and what responses they had given at the end of the day. So if you take, for instance, the most admired brands, top 100 on the African continent, you have 3 companies, the top 3, USA, Germany, and South Korea, having their brands in there, but not African countries. You have in some other areas, even in NGO, where you're having entities that are doing charity work. It is not starting from, you're having countries like USA, and again Switzerland in the first 3 positions, except in situations where the questions are prompted or the people that we're expecting to give us the answers are prompted. That is when they come up with African names. So you see, for instance, most admired brands, top 100, you have Nike, Adidas, and Samsung, or USA, Germany, South Korea, respectively. But when they are prompted, they ask most admired brands on the African continent. That is when you have Nigeria and South African companies coming in. So it points to the fact of what the fact is that 14% of African shares in terms of brands are what are admired on the African continent. Largely, you are getting most of these brands coming from outside the continent. And that is what most people are consuming, be it in the consumables, be it in the media space. And you find that even in the media space, that is the only place in this document that tells you that, well, without being prompted or without being led, Africans choose a particular brand, that is DSTV, over some other channels. But even from there, the second and third positions are from non-African brands.
So it appears that this is a bigger problem the continent is facing. How about African brands at least making some strides in spite of this tough market penetration, if we can talk about it that way?
Yes, and so even for that, you have 2 African countries taking up the majority, that is Nigeria and then South Africa, most often than not. And once in a while, you find Zambia, Ethiopia, and some other countries. But to talk about African brands that are getting this or enjoying some bit of good acceptance from Africans, you have Nigeria's Dangote. Usually, it's most of these prompts that you have seen, the answers, the People's Choice He's in there. And again, you find MTN and then DSTV. And then when you come to some other areas like the banking sector, you have South Africa's Standard Bank, and then Kenya's Equity Bank, and then South Africa again with Absa Bank. So again, it tells you the dominance of even South Africa and Nigeria on the continent in terms of what Africans consume alike. Well, except in the airline space where you find Ethiopia with Ethiopian Airlines, and then that really is it for Africa. When it comes to consumables, Coca-Cola tops in, and Coca-Cola is not an African origin, it's of USA origin.
Amazing findings there. Not too pleased about it, particularly when you don't find any Ghanaian brand in there. Michael Niashali, my colleague in the Joy Newsroom, thank you for bringing us up to speed with this. In fact, today is marking the African Day, and the African continent is dedicating that to the Continental Free Trade Area. The Secretary General, Wamkele Mene, earlier today underscored this view that now is the right moment for African leaders to take another leap towards the continent's integration by substituting these imported goods for African products. He was speaking at an event where President Akufo-Addo also participated in a dialogue on how to improve participation in the Continental Free Trade Area.
In terms of international trade, the continent is highly dependent on extra African sources of imports of food and agricultural products. Clearly, there is no reason for our continent to be a net food importer. Africa holds at least 1/6 of global plant species, with many crops of African origin, species of wheat, barley, maize meal, sorghum. 65% of the world's arable land and 30% of mineral deposits are here in our continent. Therefore, it is possible for our continent to be self-sufficient, to provide food for herself, and to unlock opportunities, job opportunities for young Africans in the area of agriculture and agro-processing. Therefore, there is an imperative for us to accelerate trade in agricultural products, basic agricultural products, to enable our communities, the rural communities, smallholder farmers, to be part of the value chain of agricultural products trade in Africa. This is why the African Continental Free Trade Area is so critical. It positions our continent to take advantage of the resources that we have, to create jobs, to enable smallholder farmers to be part of trade in Africa.
And we still have that big question, how do we show up the support for the Continental Free Trade Area when Africans themselves are not patronizing what we produce? I want to bring in two gentlemen. Tebe Ikalefeng is the chairperson of Brands Africa, those who carried out the research, and Yao Louise Affle is executive director for the African Continental Free Trade Area Policy Network. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here on Africa Day, where we're, of course, dedicating the day to the Continental Free Trade Area. Not a good start, Thebe, in terms of the findings that we're having, that Africans are not patronizing what we have. So what's the assurance that the Continental Free Trade Area will succeed? Thebe, if you can hear me, I'm just asking what the assurance is that indeed we will succeed with the Continental Free Trade Area when Africans themselves are not admiring the brands that we have.
A very good question, and indeed, until we get to a point where as Africans we are consuming African brands, then we are not going to be able to achieve the big goal of AFCFTA or any other major initiative that we're trying to drive. So I agree entirely with you that we have a problem, we have a challenge, and we need to keep building on. We need to fix the problem as Africans. And I think I've looked at it in three areas. And the one area that we need to fix, we need to invest in research. If you look at Africans, how we in the whole continent, we only spend less than 1% of our GDP on research. So if we are not spending money on research, it means we are not innovating. The second one, I look at the area of intellectual property. When it comes to intellectual property, less than 2% of the global trademarks that are registered worldwide are from Africa. And when you look at a country like China and America, they're in their 20s. So, and those are the countries which are leading in terms of coming up with new products and new initiatives. The third area is the area of pride. What we need to do is we need to transform pride into products and profits. And the problem with us as Africans is we're very proud to be African. We're very proud to tell people we're from Africa, but we don't express that through our pockets.
The point about colonial vestige, that's the belief of some as to what we're seeing. The fact that, well, I don't want to mention the name of the brands, but you know them quite well, having been there for far too long, and they've dominated the market simply because we did not have the capacity at the time to produce some of these products on the market. Could the problem not be coming from that side? The lack of appreciation for similar goods being produced in Africa when they're facing stiff opposition from those who have dominated the market for long?
But we've been around for 60 years now as a democracy, and I'll talk about sub-Saharan Africa. As look at Ghana, 6 March 1957. So it's 60 years. What we need to do as Africans, we need to stop begging, we need to stop borrowing, and we need to stop blaming. We need to take the initiative by the scruff of its neck and create those products that are going to help build the continent. If you look at listen to what His Excellency Wamkele Mene just spoke about earlier as well. The big job of AfCFTA is to open up the markets, is to enable Africans to trade with Africans. If you look at inter-Africa trade, it's only 15 to 18%, and the big goal is by 2030 to be at 50%. We are never going to achieve that if we are not creating, consuming, and supporting local brands. And what we need to do, we need to aim at the idea of ensuring that the goods and services which are moving indeed across the continent are goods that come from Africa. And if we don't do that, if we don't give African goods an advantage over imports and all those, we will remain behind all the other business, all the other countries.
Okay.
So we need to be a bit selfish as Africans.
I'll come to Louis shortly, but the question as to why African brands don't sell, the question about packaging and why we're not penetrating into other markets, do you feel that's where the problem is coming from?
I mean, let's look at the different brands that we have already in African brands. You look at Dangote, an incredibly well-packaged brand. From petroleum to flowers to cement. So we have the capacity and ability, and Dangote has proven it. You look at MTN from telecommunications, we've proven that. You look at Safaricom from Kenya, we've proven that. We've looked at Ethiopian Airlines in Ethiopia, we've proven that. You look at Ghana itself with Casaprego, which is in the top 100 brands this year again, as it was for the last couple of years. We have the ability to do that. But what we need to do, we need to be consistent in how we deliver on excellence. But we also need to, as African consumers, we need to insist that those businesses and products that we buy and support are also held up to the same high standard that we expect of non-African brands. You remember us as Africans, we would go to London, we'll go to America, go to Italy, and we will insist on the very finest. But when we come back home, we don't insist and invest in the same excellence. Instead, we'll take our money and go buy a house in Chelsea in London. We are in the UK. We'll take our money and we move to America. But when we come home, we live in slums and we live in and we're prepared to drive in bad roads, and we're prepared to take and we will then ignore the products that are of lesser quality. As Africans, we need to put a higher standard on ourselves, and we need to insist that we served and we are consuming the same products of the same level, because that's only then we are going to displace the international brands.
And there's a need for us to learn lessons from some of the brands making it. But Yao Louis Afful, through the African Continental Free Trade Policy Network, you've been able to provide some strategic partnerships and technical advice to the Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat here in Accra. But how come that you're not supporting the private sector? Where are we falling short?
I would like to say good afternoon to your viewers and also to my co panelists. I think that it's been a great research or survey that they've done. When I sometimes look back, when I pioneered the ASCFT advocacy, it's way back 2017. At the time, I didn't see any company, any private sector, any CSO, even the Secretariat itself, really pushing what the benefit of the ASCFT was about. I look back and sometimes I cry because at this point, I still feel that the understanding of the concept of this agreement far-fetched. Far-fetched. The kind of surveys that my colleague, co-panelist, is presenting, those are the kind of messages that we need to explain from the agreement to the people. And I give an example. I did a comparative study on the export and import comparativity of all the 54 African countries. Why? How can you export a product to a country when you don't know the needs of that country? How can you import from a country when you don't know what they are good at? So product identification was key. When you're able to know your product identification, then you move to the next stage in terms of what goes into the production. Then you, as my colleague said, you now look at the quality assurance. That's where standardization and certification comes in. This is very, very, very important, and it cuts across both goods and services. The private sector, we are just carrying the message, oh, let's export, we can trade among each other, we can trade. But what are you going to trade? What is it that you want to trade? What is it that you want to trade? And if you take this ASCFTA, we have services, which makes about 50% of the GDP of African economies. If you take tourism, and just take tourism, and I was happy you mentioned when you go outside Africa, you always want quality. When you take tourism, tourism has been negotiated, so it's good to go. We are ready to go pay for with hard currencies outside Africa when it comes to tourism, destinations, travels, and whatever.
Right.
If you take Ghana, the center of the earth passes through Tema, but we don't own the GMT 0.00. It is UK which is taking it away from us. But the center, the line, equator passes through Tema. Go there and see if there's any service, any product, any building, any edifice to show that this is product we have.
And since you're bringing it, just land on that point for me, yes.
If we were having an edifice, a project edifice, a tourism edifice of products at the center of the earth in Tema, you could imagine the kind of tourists that will come here to patronize that service. We don't care about that brand because we have not even put anything there because we don't believe that when we set up the center of the earth edifice or town or city, anybody will take us for granted. But let the same center of the earth be located in Dubai. We will pay hard currencies to attend. Right. Even in Nigeria, Nigerians have we call it there's a park in Nigeria where you have this electric cars, the Valley. Most Nigerians even don't have knowledge of it, let alone to patronize it. So
and that's a crucial point you're raising about even awareness. And in fact, Toby has some background in the tourism space, where, of course, he served extensively. And Toby, the point that Yao has been raising about even awareness, the private sector, being conscious of some of the opportunities around, how can we leverage on that to market African brands?
Well, I think what we need to do first, we need to invest even in the entrepreneurs in the continent. We need to help to build the capacity of African entrepreneurs to be able to rise to the level that we want them to compete. And I think the examples made about tourism are also quite important. I mean, as you know, I spent 10 years and as Deputy Chairperson of Tourism for South Africa. And we know that that's a low-hanging fruit from an African continent. It's an easy one to try to transform into a true African experience because nobody else can offer the world what we have. In terms of tourism, in terms of the authenticity, and as well as the quality of the tourism product. But where we fail again is in how we package those opportunities, how we package that. I mean, if you look at a country like Seychelles, which is 100,000 people only, and they get about 60 to 70% of their receipts from tourism. So you would say, if you understand, as a point that we made earlier, your customers, you understand where they come from. Now you'll be able to transform that. So about 2013, at the 50th anniversary of African Union, I was asked by New African to write an article to reflect on the brands in the continent. One of the interviews that I did was with Samsung, and I met KK Park, who was responsible for Africa and Middle East. And I said to him, KK, why are you so successful in the continent? He says, my friend, I'm successful. We are successful in the continent. We have taken out the brands like Nokia and all those because he himself, he said, me, myself, and most of my people, my team, have been to every other African country. And he says, because of that experience, we were able to look at Africa, to look at the opportunities that it presents. Because us Africans, when there's no electricity, when there's doomso, or there's load shedding, as we call it here, and there's we look at it and says, oh, our countries are so backward. He says, we didn't look at them that way. He said, they look at doomso, and they said, well, here is an opportunity to use the one natural resource that Africa has got, which is the sun, and take that and create products which are solar-based and to serve African consumers. So us as Africans, we always sidestep the opportunities which we are facing, which opportunities are facing us in our eyes. Because what we try and do, we first try to become Italian or better than the Italians at selling Italy, better than the English at selling English, instead of looking at the one competitive advantage we have, which is our innate understanding and authentic relationship with the rest of the country.
And I'm just taking a look at some of the brands still thriving in spite of all of these challenges. You have the likes of Dangote Group, DSTV, MTN Group. What lessons are there to learn from these brands that are at least trying to make the strides for other emerging brands within Africa to take advantage of?
You know, I think I'm excited because I've been to every single country in the continent, and because I've been to every single country in the continent, I've been able to observe some of the questions that you're referring to in terms of what makes a Dangote successful, what makes an MTN successful. Now, if you go to Nigeria, for example, and you go to the marketplaces and you see where they're selling Dangote, some of them will have a picture of a Dangote there. But the most important thing is that there's a relatability. When I saw that picture, I said, oh, so that speaks to the relatability. They can relate to the person, they can relate to the product, because they did not go and name it some Italian name to try and attract Nigerians. They named it after Dangote, using his name, which is a local name that everybody can relate to. So what's important for us as Africans is the relatability part. And the second one is the accessibility. If you look at a brand like MTN, for example, which 30 years ago created the ability to pay as you go, to use small amounts of money to get data. So it's an understanding that part of ensuring that there's accessibility to your product is you need to deliver it you need to deliver it in a way that African consumers can access it, whether it's at the smallest amount. The third one is if you look at, and I'll use an international brand, and I'll use Ghana as an example. So if you look at Coke, the Share campaign that Coke did at Ghana about 10 or so many years ago, you probably remember that campaign, and they showed the day names and the people and explaining the day names. So there was a relatability in the Ghanaian market in terms of, oh, this brand Coca-Cola, it understands me. It speaks my language. It understands my culture. So there was a relatability. There was an accessibility by the MTNs, and there was a recognition of in the Dangote space. To me, that's what it is. And most importantly is what those brands have also done well. The Dangotes, the Nike, the Dangotes, the MTNs, the Safaricoms, and the Ethiopian telecoms. What they've done well is they have packaged their brands in a way that is as competitive. They have innovated in terms of the products that they deliver, and they sell in a way that respects their customers.
Okay. Luis, you are heavy on standards. I'm also concerned about pricing. How do you marry the two?
Again?
The issue about standards, I'm also concerned about prices, because sometimes these products that are coming from elsewhere are quite relatively cheaper than the African brands themselves.
Yes. Basically, I think that if we harmonize standardization and certification, then it will enable us to have a very strategic pricing for product registration. That is very important. And I think that is what is going to be done with ASU, the African, ASU, that is a body that is looking at harmonizing that. Secondly, we need to be able to look at the value chain and what goes into the transformative stages of our products. It's very, very important. For example, there are a lot of production processes that we don't need to import inputs from outside Africa. We can Africanize our product with the resources that we have here. A key example, if we take the Golden Tree chocolates, the Golden Tree chocolates has the purest bean capacity or level for 80% of cocoa. If you look at the other chocolates, sometimes that is outside the US, wherever it is, or other countries, it's mostly powder and sugar. They really prefer our Golden Tree to what they have over there. But you go to our supermarkets and you see more of these chocolates than the Golden Tree. Why? Then he said that the price here is too expensive. Mm-hmm. Why is it so? We then have to go back to the drawing board and find out from the cocoa processing company, why is it that your pricing is too high? What is it that you need that you cannot have it here that is making your output so high? That is where then ASCFTA comes in. The ASCFTA comes in that whilst you are doing intra-trade, you look at where your comparative strength is. If you know that maybe labor is expensive here and your neighboring country can offer you the expertise, you do that kind of comparative exchange. So I think apart from standardization and certification, we also have to look into the transformative stages of our raw materials that will determine the prices, ex-factory prices that will attach our goods and our services. This is very, very, very important.
And if you take a look at the framework itself, the African Continental Free Trade Area, it seems to some that we appear not to be ready. We're still running the guided trade initiative, and many are wondering when it will be time for full takeoff.
Let me just tease you and myself.
Right.
If among the three of us now, my good friend, is it Tabo Feng?
Yes, Tebe.
Yes, he is in an African way. You are not in an African way. Even though today is African Union Day, you are not in an African way. The two of us. So we are already not patronizing. That is the first to start with. So it translates into why most people are not even ready under ASCFTA. Yes, because one, we were quick to sign something, but the implementation process is totally different. So if ASCFTA is delaying, then it has to do with the fact that our implementation strategy was totally different from our policy strategy. We need to merge the two. Secondly, there is a delink between policy level at the top and the people on the ground. Because what is at the top needs to trickle down to the ground for the ground to really process. But there's a total delink. There's a gap which needs to be filled. That is very, very important. Because if you are talking about intra-trade, I don't know the products and the needs of the country I'm supposed to trade with. Why will Ghana say import wheat from Iran when I know Nigeria can really produce that wheat in tons? Why would Nigeria go and import salt from Brazil when Ghana has so much salt? That is the kind of implementation that gap needs to be filled. Other than that, we will only be paying for workshops. And then the sad thing is that most of these institutions or grants or whatever coming out, I always say that they don't seem to understand the ASCFTA, or they are just don't be naive in supporting the implementation of the ASCFTA. And I give you an example. most of these fund organizations who are here in Africa always are ready to give out money for workshops, capacity building, training. They are not interested in giving us the money to set up the factories, to set up the industries that can really connect to the value additions or the products we have here. And that is what we need from them. We don't need a workshop. The workshops are okay. Because once we go down to the people, they will understand. Set up the factory. The money they are having, give it to us to set up the factory. That is when we become ready. Until we put factors of production into good use, we will continue to become talk shop. 3 years into trading now, can you tell me how many even of the customs within Africa have decoded their single windows and said this is an after product? This is an after product. They don't know.
I see. But then this will certainly create challenges for businesses. And beyond that as well, it's also raising and bringing back the arguments that were made at the start of takeoff in terms of ratification for the agreement itself. Tebe, I recall Eritrea making that strong case that let's build the RECs, let's build the regional economic communities, have stronger brands there, stronger communities there before the takeoff of the Continental Free Trade Area. So we got it wrong from the start?
Well, it's 50-50 because it's a good question. The edge is good. We have started well. But I was making a point this morning, and I said elsewhere, I think that when the ASCFTA was adopted, the technical team that led to the phase 1 should have been maintained and left at the African Union Commission to focus on the phase 2 and phase 3. But I think that the autonomy of the Secretariat was too fast.
Right.
Because you needed time to let those teams fully finish, because that they take time, go around the countries, negotiate, take their time, look at the nays and yeas, so that the Secretariat that focus on the phase 1, and but the Secretariat said, no, let's move all the offices into Accra. And at the time you were struggling with what do you call it, recruitment issues, with technical, with resources or resource people. That was one. Secondly, the parties that negotiated, they brought their schedules, they brought their concessions, but the key element that was missing was this. Were there legislative instruments backing the schedules and things that they brought forward? Is one thing saying I'm ready to liberalize this, and it's another thing showing that you have legislations in place. I once had a conversation with the Secretary General, and he said, I'm frustrated. And I said, are you sure? He said, the frustration is this, look, I have done what I have to do by being a referee.
Okay.
But when you get down to the countries, especially the customs or the ports, legislations to really enforce whatever has been agreed to is.
For the sake of time, we need to go. So we'll have this conversation again. But Tebe, let me give you the final word as we wrap up. Yes, there are a few challenges where we're going to in terms of takeoff, because we're still running the guided trade initiative, as of course Yao Louisa was talking about. But we have some brands still stronger to pull others up, and some individuals as well. For instance, yourself being part of the 100 most influential on the continent. How do we gather and harness the energy so we're able to at least give a further boost to Continental Free Trade Area in spite of the challenges we're facing?
I think it starts with what Fela Kuti once said. He says you must identify with Africa, then you'll have an identity. So we need to appreciate on Africa Day, but every single day, that being African is our most important competitive advantage. And if you look at the wealth of the continent that we've not been able to translate into the wealth into goods and services which are feeding Africans and looking after Africans. Because what we must remember is when we're creating great brands, we are creating the revenues, we are creating jobs, and we're creating a tax base. That tax base will help to pay for the public goods that we want to create a great continent. What we need to do, we need to face neither east, neither west, as Kwame Nkrumah once said, and face forward. Put our energies into the continent, and we need to hold everybody that we put in power accountable. And we need to support African entrepreneurs to create businesses and opportunities, because that's where we are failing, that we have left our youth, who make up 70% of the continent, who are 70% of whom are under the age of 30. We have left them all helpless and don't even know what to do with themselves and their talent.
And such a great quote from Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's Last Stage of Imperialism book. We're grateful, David and Yao Louisa, for joining us here on The Pulse. We need to wrap up, but before we do so, interacting with our ambassador in Dubai, Alhaji Ahmed Ramadan, has been talking about how Ghanaians in Dubai are facing and trying to work out some plans to help their daily lives comfortable. He's been indicating in this interview that since he became the ambassador to Dubai, they've been working out a plan to ensure that Ghanaians have it easier moving into the Emiratis. There's more in this interview when he spoke to my colleague Justin Osei with our sister station up at Asempa FM.
We really have gotten closer to each other. You know, we have really established some memorandum of understanding between us. Okay. We made them to understand that, you know, our people have been coming here to seek job, and then there is this kind of issue where they come in, this kind of job they are expecting, they don't really get them. You know, and that we want to step in to make sure that, you know, these things are smoothing down. So we signed an MOU on labor migration. Okay. But it has not been fully ratified back home and even here. Okay. So it is still, you know, in the pipeline.
Been a challenge.
That's right. Well, the challenge that, you know, our parliament has not really, you know, deliberated on it. Okay. To finalize it. And that they also haven't really completed their processes of finalization.
It's still in the pipeline.
So they are still in the pipeline. Okay. But we also did that of visa waiver. Okay. Which was also ratified by our parliament. Okay. And they also ratified it here. Okay. But we have certain initial difficulties with the airlines when they are picking the Ghanaian, you know, to this place, not knowing that these things have been ratified, you know, it creates a little difficulty. But for now, it has been resolved, you know. People coming with diplomatic passport, they don't really need a visa. They can come in, you know, and when they arrive, you know, they can get their things through.
And now the German government has announced that its new citizenship law is in the final stage of legislation. The legislation aims to make dual citizenship easier, as well as naturalization for non-EU citizens. The reforms are part of a wide-ranging overhaul of Germany's immigration laws that is mainly aimed at encouraging more skilled workers to come to Germany and fill the massive shortages in the labour market. DW's Thomas Barr is joining us live from Berlin with more. Thomas, what exactly is the government promising in terms of this whole issue about dual citizenship?
Germany is actually one of a few European countries that has made dual citizenship rather difficult. Other countries in this group include the Netherlands, Austria, or Spain, and this is something that the new German government that has been in place since 2021 actually wants to change. It is part of one of their campaign promises to make dual citizenship much easier for people who have lived in the country for a certain number of years, or for children whose parents have lived here in Germany for a certain number of years. It's important to understand this as part of a much wider project to change Germany's immigration system. On the one hand, there is an understanding that Germany faces significant challenges when it comes to population becoming older, also shortages in the labour market, and as such, it is one of the goals of this government led by the Social Democrats to precisely make all this easier. It's a very big also a very challenging issue here in Germany, but it's one that the coalition led by the Social Democrats certainly wants to change.
And I'm just wondering how big this issue of the shortages are in the labour market.
It is absolutely a key topic, a very evident topic as well, and in fact one that really affects a wide-ranging part of Germany's economic system. Over 50% of German companies say that this shortage is a risk for them, and it's important here to understand that Germany's power internationally, Germany's influence internationally, is to a large extent related to its economic power. So basically anything that might affect this economic power, this economic development is something that is of high concern here in the country. That is also why Germany's government, also the Labour Ministry here in Berlin, want to change. That's also, for example, why the foreign minister, but also other members of the German cabinet are travelling around the world to try and make sure that they can attract skilled workers here to Germany.
All of this, does the German government have the support of the people, the population in all of these issues?
And it's actually an important topic, this, because if you look generally at the topic of migration, there have been polls in recent months that have revealed that more Germans actually see negative consequences when it comes to migration rather than positive consequences. However, if you specifically look at the issue of skilled workers, there around 40% of Germans think that Germany and the German government should actually attract more skilled workers. Opposition to this regard comes actually from the political extremes, so from the far left or the far right, but most people who are linked to Germany's big parties actually favour the idea that Germany should attract more skilled workers. But it is, as I stressed, a highly controversial issue here in this country.
Thomas Barrow with our partners DW joining us from Berlin. And that's all we have for you here on the show. I'm Blessed. So we're going to log on to myjoyonline.com. We have more stories for you there. Next is Business Live. Thanks for watching. See you again. Bye-bye.